somewhere in the vastness of space, aboard a station that looked like someone had taken a disco ball and given it delusions of grandeur, the Galactic Weather Congress was having its centennial meeting. The main chamber sparkled with bioluminescent decorations that would have made a Las Vegas casino feel inadequate, while representatives from over 300 worlds discussed what they considered to be extreme weather conditions. "On my world," declared Ambassador Zix 427, whose crystalline form reflected the room's lighting like a walking chandelier, "we endure acid rain that merely dissolves our outer layer twice a year." The ambassador's tone carried the unmistakable pride of someone bragging about their morning workout routine. "How quaint," replied Representative Blubborp, a gelatinous mass who kept shifting colors like a lava lamp, having an identity crisis. "My species evolved in methane storms that would strip the paint off your spacecraft. We consider that a mild spring breeze." The chamber hummed with similar conversations, each species trying to outdo the other in their tales of meteorological hardship. It was the intergalactic equivalent of that one friend who always has to one-up everyone else's stories, except here it was happening on a cosmic scale. In the corner, looking about as comfortable as a penguin at a beach party, stood Earth's first representative to the Congress. The human watched the proceedings with the expression of someone who had just walked into a room full of people arguing about which flavor of ice cream was the most extreme, while holding knowledge of ghost peppers in their back pocket. "And what about the newly admitted planet? Earth, is it?" A being composed entirely of plasma contained within a force field sneered, if plasma could sneer. "I heard their atmosphere is primarily nitrogen and oxygen. How absolutely boring." "Yes," chimed in another delegate, this one appearing as a floating cloud of metallic particles. "Their primary precipitation is just frozen or liquid dihydrogen monoxide. Can you imagine anything more pedestrian?" The human representative cleared their throat, a sound that somehow managed to cut through the cacophony of alien languages and translation devices. It was the kind of throat clearing that carried with it the weight of someone about to drop an inconvenient truth bomb. "Actually," the human began, in a tone that would be familiar to anyone who's ever had to correct an overconfident expert, "I think you might find Earth's weather patterns interesting." The chamber fell into what could only be described as a condescending silence, the kind of silence that says, "Oh, honey, that's cute that you think so." "Our records indicate your planet has an average temperature range of merely 100 degrees on your Celsius scale," stated a being who appeared to be made of living rock. "My world experiences daily fluctuations of 500 degrees. The human smile grew slightly wider, reminiscent of a cat who had spotted an unsuspecting canary. "Well, temperature isn't everything. Have you ever heard of something we call a tornado?" "A what nado?" asked Ambassador Zix 427, crystalline structure vibrating with barely contained amusement. "Oh, just a little atmospheric phenomenon," the human replied, casual as someone discussing their weekend plans. "You see, sometimes our sky decides to turn into a rotating column of air that can lift houses, toss vehicles like toys, and turn a piece of straw into a lethal projectile capable of embedding itself in concrete." The chamber's previous buzz of conversation died faster than a smartphone battery at a crucial moment. Several delegates blinked their various sensory organs in confusion, while others began rapidly consulting their data devices, certain they had misheard the translation. "You're speaking in metaphors," accused the plasma being, its containment field flickering with skepticism. The human pulled out a small holographic projector, their expression now matching that of a teacher about to show a particularly graphic educational video. "Oh no, I'm being quite literal. Would you like to see?" The assembled delegates leaned forward, their collective curiosity overwhelming their previous dismissiveness. None of them realized they were about to receive an education that would fundamentally change their understanding of what constituted extreme weather. And in that moment, As the human's finger hovered over the projector's activation button, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted. It was about to become a perfect example of why underestimating Earth, or its weather, was a mistake that most species only made once. The holographic projector hummed to life, casting a blue glow across the chamber that made several photosensitive species adjust their protective filters. The human's presentation began with what appeared to be a deceptively peaceful scene of a Midwestern prairie, complete with gently swaying wheat fields and scattered farmhouses. "Now pay attention to the sky," the human instructed, their voice carrying the same tone a nature documentary narrator might use before showing footage of a predator stalking its prey. The assembled delegates watched as the pristine blue sky gradually transformed. Dark clouds rolled in like an cosmic army preparing for battle, their formations more precise than any military maneuver the gathered species had ever witnessed. The time-lapse footage showed the atmosphere literally boiling above their heads, clouds churning with an intensity that made several gaseous beings compress themselves nervously. "What you're watching is the formation of a supercell thunderstorm," the human explained, barely containing their amusement at the visible discomfort spreading through the chamber. "These are, shall we say, the appetizer before our main course." "Appetizer?" squeaked a silicon-based life form, its crystalline structure vibrating with concern. "You mean this gets worse?" "Oh, my dear fellow Congress members," the human replied, channeling the energy of someone about to reveal the plot twist in a mystery novel, "this is just getting started." The hologram shifted to show the base of the storm, where clouds began to rotate in a way that defied several aliens' understanding of atmospheric physics. A massive wall cloud descended from the storm's base, looking like the fist of an angry sky god about to punch the ground. "This particular storm produced what we categorize as an HFY tornado," the human continued, now pacing around the projection like a professor giving the lecture of their life. "The EF stands for Enhanced Fujita Scale, named after the scientist who developed the original system for measuring tornado intensity. An EF5, that's wind speeds over 300 kilometers per hour. The plasma being's containment field flickered erratically. But that would mean—" "Yes," the human interrupted, clearly enjoying themselves now. "Winds strong enough to strip asphalt from roads, demolish reinforced concrete buildings, and launch vehicles weighing several tons into the air like they're children's toys." The hologram shifted again, showing actual footage of such a tornado in action. The funnel cloud, dark and massive, carved through the landscape like a malevolent entity. The assembled delegates watched in horrified fascination as the tornado lifted a full-sized agricultural vehicle and spun it around as if it were a plastic toy in a child's bathtub. "Is this common on your world?" asked a gaseous being, its voice wavering between frequencies. "Oh, we get about 1,200 tornadoes annually in just one country," the human replied casually, as if discussing the weather, which technically they were. "That's just in the United States. We call the most active region Tornado Alley. It's like a cosmic bowling alley, except instead of bowling balls, we have rotating columns of air that can level entire communities." The crystalline ambassador's surface began to develop small cracks from stress. "And your species survives this?" "Survives? We've turned it into a science. We have teams of storm chasers who actually pursue these phenomena for research purposes. Some even do it for fun." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of translated exclamations, ranging from disbelief to horror. Several delegates began frantically accessing their databases, refusing to believe that such conditions could exist on a supposedly habitable world. "But wait," the human continued, their voice cutting through the chaos like a knife through butter. "We haven't even gotten to the really interesting part yet. You see, tornadoes don't just come one at a time. Sometimes they form in families." "Families?" A multi-dimensional being shifted nervously through several planes of existence. Yes, families. Multiple tornadoes from the same storm system. The record for a single outbreak was 360 tornadoes over 4 days. We call that the 2011 super outbreak. It was like Mother Nature decided to throw a party and everyone was invited, whether they wanted to be or not. The hologram displayed a map showing the paths of hundreds of tornadoes crisscrossing over a significant portion of a continent. The visual representation looked like someone had taken a handful of angry snakes and thrown them onto a map. And here's the truly fascinating part, the human continued, their voice taking on the tone of someone about to deliver the punchline to an elaborate joke. These aren't even our most destructive weather phenomena. Would you like to hear about hurricanes? Or perhaps we could discuss derechos? Oh, and let's not forget about the time it rained fish in Honduras. It rained fish? The plasma being's containment field nearly shorted out. Sometimes nature gets creative with her delivery methods. The human shrugged. But let's focus on tornadoes for now. Did you know that we've documented cases where tornadoes have lifted entire houses into the air? There was this one time in Kansas. The human's explanation was interrupted by a loud thud as one of the delegates, a being composed entirely of mathematical equations, fainted, or whatever the equivalent was for a consciousness that existed as pure mathematics. Perhaps we should take a brief recess, suggested the conference moderator, noting that several delegates were showing signs of extreme distress. Of course, the human agreed, their smile never wavering. We can resume after everyone's had a chance to process what they've learned so far. I haven't even shown you the footage of tornado-ignited fire whirls yet. We call those fire-nados. Very creative naming convention, I know. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many casting nervous glances at both the human and the now dormant hologram projector, the human couldn't help but notice how their previous condescension had been replaced with something between respect and terror. A small group of delegates huddled in a corner, whispering among themselves. The human caught fragments of their conversation. Perhaps we should reconsider. Clearly underestimated. And they live there voluntarily? The humans settled back in their chair, mentally preparing the next part of their presentation. After all, they hadn't even gotten to the part about how tornadoes can occur anywhere on the planet, not just in Tornado Alley, or how they can form with almost no warning, or how some humans actually celebrated these weather events with tornado-themed parties and festivals. The galaxy was about to learn that when it came to extreme weather, Earth didn't just participate, it had turned it into an art form. And its inhabitants? They had turned survival into a science, adaptation into an adventure, and the study of these phenomena into a career choice. The human checked their notes for the next session. Wait until they heard about the time a tornado lifted a train off its tracks, or about the tornado that carried a motel sign for over 30 miles. Or better yet, the story about the tornado that picked up a man in his bathtub and set him down unharmed in a field. Yes, this was going to be an educational experience for everyone involved. And somewhere in the back of their mind, the human couldn't help but wonder what these beings would think when they learned about earthquakes, volcanoes, and tsunamis. But that would be a presentation for another day. For now, they had plenty of tornado facts to share, and an increasingly captive, if somewhat terrified, audience to share them with. After the recess, during which several delegates had attempted to recalibrate their sensory organs in the vain hope they had somehow misinterpreted the previous presentation, the chamber refilled with attention thick enough to cut with a laser blade. The human stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by the now wary delegates who had, just hours ago, been dismissing Earth's weather patterns as quaint. Their holographic projector hummed back to life, this time displaying a three-dimensional cross-section of a supercell thunderstorm. Now, the human began, their voice carrying the enthusiasm of a weather enthusiast mixed with the mischievous tone of someone about to shatter more worldviews. Let's talk about the actual mechanics of how these lovely atmospheric phenomena form. The projection zoomed in on the storm's rotation, showing the complex interaction between updrafts and downdrafts. Several aeriform species visibly recoiled at the violent mixing of air currents. You see, when we have warm, moist air at the surface meeting cool, dry air above, combined with wind shear. The human paused, noting the confused expressions. Think of it as nature's version of a blender, except the blender is several kilometers tall and can toss cars around like confetti. Surely your species has developed ways to prevent these formations, asked a being composed of pure energy, their form flickering with what appeared to be hope. The human's laugh echoed through the chamber. Prevent them? We can barely predict them with absolute certainty more than a few minutes in advance. Some tornadoes form so quickly we call them ninja tornadoes. They show up, cause chaos, and disappear before anyone really knows what happened. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The silicon-based delegate's crystalline structure emitted a high-pitched whine that their translator couldn't quite interpret. But wait, the human continued, advancing to the next hologram. Let me show you something really special. Multiple vortex tornadoes. Imagine a big tornado that has several smaller tornadoes rotating around it. It's like a deadly cosmic dance, complete with wind speeds that make some of your spacecraft's atmospheric entry velocities look pedestrian. The projection showed exactly that. A massive tornado with satellite vortices swirling around its main circulation like angry children around a maypole. Several delegates began accessing their planet's emergency communication systems, presumably to check on their weather defense protocols. This particular example, the human gestured to the hologram, was strong enough to strip the bark off trees, not just the leaves, the actual bark. The wind speeds were so high that pieces of straw were found embedded in solid wood. Physics gets a bit creative when you're dealing with these sorts of forces. How? The plasma being's containment field crackled with static. How do your structures survive? That's the neat part, the human replied, grinning. Sometimes they don't. We just rebuild. We've gotten quite good at it, actually. Some areas have specialized architecture designed specifically with tornadoes in mind. Underground shelters, reinforced safe rooms. We call them tornado shelters. Very imaginative, I know. The hologram shifted to show various tornado safety structures, including a time-lapse of a house being rebuilt after tornado damage. The human continued their explanation with the air of someone describing their favorite hobby. We've even developed an entire warning system around these events. Sirens, weather radar, emergency broadcasts. It's quite sophisticated, though sometimes people ignore the warnings because they want to go outside and look at the tornado. They want to look at it? The mathematical equation began flickering through prime numbers in distress. Oh yes, we have entire teams of professional storm chasers, scientists, researchers, photographers. They actually drive towards these things. For science, of course, and sometimes for fun, and occasionally for both. The chamber erupted in a chorus of translated exclamations that roughly translated to variations of "why" in several hundred languages. Here's some footage from a chase vehicle, the human said, switching the hologram again. The perspective showed a massive tornado from uncomfortably close range, with excited voices in the background discussing wind speeds and funnel characteristics as casually as one might discuss dinner plans. Note how close they are to the tornado, the human pointed out unnecessarily. This team was gathering data on tornado formation and behavior. See that probe they're trying to deploy? The goal is to get it into the tornado's path to measure internal wind speeds and pressure differences. A gelatinous delegate oozed slightly lower in their hover seat. Your species intentionally places itself in danger for data collection. Well, how else are we going to learn about them? The human seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. Besides, the data helps us understand these storms better, which improves our warning systems and saves lives. The human pulled up another hologram, this one showing a weather radar display. We can now detect rotation in storms before tornadoes form, track their movements with incredible precision, and even estimate their intensity based on debris signatures, all because some brave souls decided to drive into storms with scientific equipment. "And your governing bodies permit this behavior?" asked a delegate who appeared to be made of living metal. "Permit it? They fund it. We have entire governmental organizations dedicated to studying severe weather. The National Weather Service, NOAA, university research programs. It's a whole industry." The humans' enthusiasm was met with stunned silence. They continued, either oblivious to or enjoying the growing discomfort in the room. "We've even developed a sport out of it, really. Storm-chasing tours are quite popular. People pay good money to spend their vacations pursuing tornadoes across the plains. It's like a safari, except instead of tracking animals, you're tracking rotating columns of air that could kill you." The chamber had grown so quiet you could hear the subtle hum of the station's life support systems. The human took advantage of the silence to cue up their next series of holograms. "Now, who's ready to learn about tornado outbreak sequences? It's what happens when multiple tornado-producing storms occur over several days. The record holder produced tornadoes across 13 states. It was quite spectacular, really. We had to create new categories just to classify some of the damage patterns. The mathematical equation began rapidly calculating the probability of their home world experiencing such weather patterns, their numbers growing increasingly erratic with each new piece of information. The human couldn't help but notice that several delegates were now viewing Earth's position in the galactic community with newfound respect. Or perhaps it was fear. It was sometimes hard to tell the difference when dealing with species that expressed emotions through color changes, electromagnetic pulses, or quantum fluctuations. Either way, it was becoming clear that the galaxy's perception of Earth as a backwater planet with boring weather was rapidly changing. And the human hadn't even gotten to the part about how tornadoes could occur on waterspouts, in fire whirls, or during snowstorms, snow devils. The education of the Galactic Weather Congress was far from over, and Earth's reputation was about to undergo a significant revision in the cosmic database of extraordinary planets. As the human prepared their final presentation segment, several delegates had switched from taking notes to drafting what appeared to be evacuation plans for potential Earth-like weather scenarios. The plasma being had requested a second containment field just to be safe. "For our grand finale," the human announced, with the flourish of a magician about to pull off their most impressive trick, "let's discuss something we call tornado emergency situations." "Is that different from regular tornadoes?" asked the crystalline delegate, who had developed a noticeable crack from stress. "Oh yes, that's when we have a confirmed violent tornado moving into a populated area. It's our way of saying, this is not a drill, this is not your average tornado, this is the kind that makes insurance companies cry." The hologram displayed a massive, wedge-shaped tornado approaching a city. The funnel was so wide, it made several delegates question their understanding of atmospheric physics. "This particular tornado was over 2 miles wide," the human explained casually. "That's roughly the size of some of your smaller space stations. We call these wedge tornadoes because they're wider than they are tall. They're basically nature's way of showing off." 2 miles wide? The mathematical being began dividing by 0 in distress. "Indeed. And here's the truly fascinating part. Humans have developed a culture around these events. We have tornado spotters, amateur radio networks, and entire communities dedicated to tracking and documenting these storms. Some people can even smell when tornado conditions are developing. They can smell them? The gelatinous delegate rippled in disbelief. There's a distinct odor. Some say it smells like fresh-cut grass. Others say it's more like electricity. We're quite attuned to our atmosphere's mood swings. The human switched to a final series of images showing the aftermath of various tornadoes. Here's what happens when one of these lovely atmospheric phenomena decides to redecorate a neighborhood. Note how that piece of straw is embedded in a concrete wall. Physics gets rather creative when winds exceed 300 miles per hour. The chamber had grown so quiet that the sound of several species' nervous digestive processes was clearly audible. But here's the most important thing you should know, the human said, their voice taking on a more serious tone. Despite all this, we thrive, we rebuild, we adapt. We study these forces not because we can control them, but because we've learned to dance with them. Every time nature throws a new type of storm at us, we don't just survive, we take notes. The human gestured to the final hologram, showing cities rebuilt after devastating tornadoes, improved warning systems, and communities coming together in the aftermath of storms. So the next time you want to dismiss Earth as having boring weather, remember this. We live on a planet where the air occasionally decides to stand on its head and spin fast enough to toss buildings around like toys, and we consider this normal enough to have tourist attractions based around it. The chamber remained silent for a long moment before the conference moderator finally spoke up. I believe we should revise our classification of Earth's atmospheric conditions. Oh, this was just tornadoes, the human replied cheerfully. Wait until you hear about our hurricanes, derechos, thundersnow, and that one time it rained fish in Honduras. Should I prepare another presentation? The moderator quickly called for a motion to adjourn, which passed unanimously and with unprecedented speed. As the delegates hurriedly filed out of the chamber, many were already drafting proposals to upgrade Earth's classification from mild weather planet to extreme weather advisory, approach with caution. The human packed up their holographic projector, humming contentedly. They had a whole presentation about volcanic lightning ready for the next conference. After all, why should tornadoes have all the fun? As they left the chamber, they overheard one delegate asking another, "Do you think they were exaggerating about the fish rain?" The human smiled. Some things in life you just had to experience to believe, and Earth, it seemed, had an endless supply of unbelievable experiences to share with the galaxy. End. The epilogue would later note that the Galactic Weather Congress established a new classification system for planetary weather patterns. Earth was given its own category, simply labelled Earth-like, warning, contains extreme weather phenomena beyond standard classification parameters. They also instituted a new rule that all future weather-related conferences would be held in environmentally controlled space stations, far from any planetary atmosphere that might get creative ideas about rotating vertically. And somewhere in Kansas, a tornado siren wailed its mournful song, while storm chasers raced across the plains, pursuing another demonstration of Earth's meteorological majesty. Just another Tuesday on the planet that had accidentally traumatized the entire galactic weather-watching community.